Hello. Today we are going to start with what is psychology, the first chapter, which is called the scientific study. Psychology is a scientific study of behavior and mental processes. So, when we talk about behavior, we are talking about overt, external, observable, something that is seen. So, imagine I'm getting angry, that's a behavior that is going to be openly seen. Next is what is the mental processes. What is going inside of us is internal, is something that is not seen by everyone. So it is non-observable and covert. Now, if you ask me that how mental processes can be studied in psychology, there are various brain scans which are used to understand that when a person engages in a particular activity, what are the changes in the brain that is happening. That is how mental processes are studied. Also, say I want to measure your intelligence, it's a mental process that, say, imagine I want to know that how intelligent you are. I can't see and tell you that yes, you are intelligent or you're not intelligent. It's through these mental processes that are studied, which are non-observable. Last, it is scientific study. It's a science. It is a social science because it is very research based. It is very evidence based. It is not something that just comes and goes, or that's something randomly told by people or based on intuitions. No, like some auntie saying that I think this guy is not good. It's not intuitive based. It is a very research based study wherein only evidences are taken into consideration. Next, we come to what is the goal of psychology. What do they try to achieve in psychology? First is description. Noting down everything that's going around, describing. So say I want to describe a person's behavior. I might describe it as polite, someone who's introvert, shy, reserved. So what am I doing is I'm describing a person. So first goal is description. What are the questions that you try to answer is like who, whom, what, where, how. So for an example, I'm going to take a support of an experiment which is called the Bobo doll experiment, a very famous one. So say a psychologist wants to find out that whether the environment around me causes aggression and violence in children. So first thing that he is going to do is observe kids who are violent and aggressive in nature. And then he is going to check their background, that do they have a background or of an environment where everything is really violent around them. Okay, let's see this. So first goal is description, where you describe things and it is based on observation. Okay. Next is explanation. Now the goal of psychology is to understand why does it happen the way it happens. Basically, what is the cause behind it. And for this, they take help of theories. Now, let us go back to our example of Bobo doll. This experiment is given by Bandura. So, say there are two groups of children. One group of children, one by one, they are exposed to a video clip which shows there's a Bobo doll, a doll which you punch and it comes back to you. They see a video clip. The group one sees a video clip wherein the Bobo doll is punched, kicked, very aggressive behavior towards the Bobo doll is shown on that video clip on a television. The second group, on the other hand, is shown a child who is loving the Bobo doll, who's cuddling the Bobo doll, kissing, hugging. So love is shown on the second video clip. So there are two groups. Okay, the two groups are there so that we can compare the two behaviors. So the first behavior we see is that the Bobo doll is punched, kicked. On the other hand, we see the other Bobo doll, the other video clip, where it is loved, kissed, cuddled, hugged. Okay. So the goal is to understand why do children learn it. Okay. I will be using this experiment again to explain you. So what we saw is the result of this experiment was the children who saw the video clip, the group one that saw where the Bobo doll was kicked, punched, being violent with the Bobo doll, ended up copying or imitating the same behavior when they were left with one Bobo doll. On the other hand, the group which saw a Bobo doll which was loved, cared, the ones who saw this second video were the ones who showed love, cuddling, hugging to the bobo doll when they saw the bobo doll in a toy room. Okay, so the experiment shows that children learn by seeing, by observing the things that are around them, which gives us an idea that it explains why aggression happens in children. That's the goal of psychology, the second goal. The third goal is prediction. Not only that you think about how is it like, basically what it describes or how it is being explained, it is also predicting future. Okay, so research will help us understand why aggression happens in children. They learn by seeing people around them. So this gives a prediction that if people are behaving a particular way, the prediction of psychology according to research will tell them that how they are going to be in the future. Okay, now the last goal of psychology is controlling. After knowing that, say a parent who is very aggressive with their child and they learn about psychology and the theories related to it, say a counselor informs them, so there is a chance of modification of behavior where the person engages into how to modify this particular behavior. Okay, these are the 4 goals. Now the 4 goals, again I'm going to go through it. First one we saw is description. Second we saw explanation. Third we saw prediction, and the fourth we saw was control. Now we are moving on to history of psychology, who actually helped us to understand how psychology was developed right from the foundation till where it is today. Okay, let us go through it. First is philosophers. Okay, philosophers were the first one to understand that there is something that is operating the way a person behaves or is in a particular environment. So they came up with that philosophers thought that soul is a main thing that is associated with how we are. So there's even a philosopher known as Plato, he said that pineal gland, which is a very small part in our brain, this small, okay, which basically controls all our body, physical, biological movements. He said pineal gland is where our soul is there, and soul is the one that decides how we are. Okay, but psychology, like I said before, is not something that is not tangible or not provable. It's very objective. It's very much a scientific study, which means that this has to be discarded because you cannot touch the soul. Okay, soul is something, so if I ask you where is your soul, can you touch and tell me? You will not be able to do that. So this idea was dropped, but the first ones to ever attempt to understand psychology were philosophers. Next is the approach that helped us to understand psychology better was called structuralism. So there was a certain structure to it. Okay, so when we talk about structuralism, the first one to talk about is Wilhelm Wundt. He was the first ever to set up a psychology lab in the world in Leipzig in Germany in 1879. Okay, he was the one who gave objective introspection. He said there needs to be something that needs to be touched, that needs to be something that will help us understand and judge the thing that is there around us. So he said, so for example, he would ask his patients to hold a stone in their hand, close their eyes, and ask them to describe how they feel, what thoughts are coming into it, what emotions are they feeling, what experiences are coming up. Such things were covered in structuralism, and he was the first ever to get objectivity into psychology and to make us understand that subjectivity would not work in psychology. Okay, now William Wundt also was followed by Titchener. His student Edward Titchener is a student of Wundt. So instead of placing something in the hand, he asked them to imagine it. Okay, imagine that there is something blue. Okay, what thoughts are coming into you, what feelings are coming, what experiences are coming. Okay, so Titchener was a student of Wundt. Titchener's student was Margaret Washburn, and she was the first ever woman in psychology to get a PhD degree. She was the first woman to get a PhD in psychology and no one other. So again, structuralism had 3 people, William Wundt, Titchener and Margaret Washburn. Next we come to functionalism. but also to remember that structuralism died out soon. The reason being that these people who were there involved in it started fighting with each other that their opinion or their theory is better than the other, and this ended structuralism. Next we saw functionalism. Okay, functionalism is given by William James. Also, William James is known as the father of American psychology. He is the first one to teach psychology as a subject at Harvard University. He wrote the book Principles of Psychology. He focused on not what, he focused on functioning of humans. That is how humans operate in real world. Okay, so how people work, how people adapt, and he was very inspired by our own Charles Darwin's evolution theory. Evolution theory is basically survival of the fittest. So do you have to teach bird how to nest? It learns on its own. Do you have to go and teach an ant go and pick up the sugar? No, it learns on its own. So all these are telling you that the survival, the person who wants to survive will do anything to survive. So physical traits are based on survival. So our wings, birds who have wings are there for a reason, and they learn to use that physical trait. Okay, we have teeth, we learn by chewing it. No one tells us eat like this. They all come naturally to us. Okay, even sexual intercourse for that reason is a very natural thing that happens to us. It's not something that is taught by people around us, right? So James wondered, coming back to William James, based on Charles Darwin's theory, why is it only limited to physical trait? Why are we not focusing on behavioral traits? Behavioral traits are also on survival. For example, why do we avoid eye contact with strangers, especially when we are in a lift, in an elevator? Why do we help people on street? Say someone had an accident, why do you feel like going and helping them? Why we greet people on meeting? Why do we say hello, hi, how are you? Why do we engage ourselves into all that? Okay, next. After William James, we already spoke about Margaret Washburn, but after William James, we had a person in functionalism known as Mary Calkins. Okay, she was a student of William James itself, but what was different about her is she attempted to get a PhD, but Harvard University did not. It denied it from getting a PhD, but she really deserved it. She was only allowed to have guest lectures. Hence, she took her life on, wherein she put up her own psychology lab in Wellesley College. She worked on human memory and psychology of self, and she was the first president of APA. APA stands for American Psychological Association. It's basically the biggest association which tells us about the ethics. It tells about therapies, how the therapists need to be, counseling. So everything related to psychology is actually coming from no one other than APA. And she was the first female president of APA. And the sadness is that she never got a PhD, but the good part is she was a very successful professor and a researcher. Now, coming to the next approach, can you make sense of this? Maybe not. Can you make sense of it now being inside the intestine? Yes, you can. So there comes the next approach, which is called how we perceive things. Now, if you see at the left picture, what do you see? Do you see a vase at first? If you see in depth, you will see one face here and the other face here. Did you see it? Yeah. So now let's go to this picture. Can you see a tree? You'll soon realize there is a chimpanzee monkey, and on the other hand, you will see someone like a lion or a lioness. Okay. So what do we see is we perceive at first when we see things, we are going to perceive it as whole, not as parts. That's when the next comes called the Gestalt psychology, wherein he says the whole is greater than sum of its parts. Okay, it's given by Max Wertheimer. He is the biggest contributor when it comes to Gestalt. Gestalt itself means whole. It means the whole configuration together. How we perceive things, how we see things, how we think, how we learn. Everything is about whole. So imagine I am going to imagine a child who's studying. He is going to be first taught what is going to be their syllabus. After that, it's going to be broken down, because we want to perceive things as whole and not as parts. To understand this better, say for example, if I remove all the parts of the car, will it make sense? No. But when it's put together, it becomes a machine, a vehicle that helps us to operate or go from one place to another. So we perceive things, we see things as whole. We don't say car ka wo screw hai na wo best hai. We say the car is good because we perceive the car as good. Okay. Next very interesting theory comes, or the approach of understanding psychology comes from psychodynamic. So Sigmund Freud is the one who came up with this theory, and he believed very much different from others that something that is operating us is the unconscious mind. When I say unconscious mind, is basically that we are not conscious about something that we are doing. For example, say one day you just get angry and you slap someone, and then you just get back to it and you are like, I'm not someone like that. I'm not into slapping. I'm not like that. So this is where Freud comes in and tells this is explained by your unconscious mind, where there are hidden fears, hidden motives, irrational urges, irrational wishes of life. Okay, say sexual fantasies are also a part of unconscious mind according to Freud. Let's understand what Freud did. Freud was basically a doctor of nervous disorders, and when he saw that his patients were not getting healed, even there was no physical cause, he thought there's something more to it. He thought that there is something else that we are not even aware, that is the unconscious mind. So he also came up with the theory that the first 6 years of a child is very, very important. How those 6 years go will determine how his adulthood will be. His followers were his own daughter Anna Freud, Carl Jung, and Alfred Adler. Okay, actually Carl Jung is known as Carl Jung. For spellings, you can name it as Carl Jung, but Carl Jung is the right pronunciation. Next is behaviorism, that is stimulus-response relationship. So there was a man who said there is so if I pinch you, you're going to go out. So stimulus is my pinch, and the response that you give is ouch. So that is stimulus-response relationship. The first one to think about how stimulus response works really well was Watson. We'll come to him. But one of the biggest contributors is Ivan Pavlov. He did a dog experiment. The dog experiment was basically called classical conditioning, wherein the dog was shown food, and they saw that whenever food was there, before even the food was going into the mouth of the dog, they start salivating. Like basically you will see a lot of saliva coming out of their mouth. So they came up with a thing that let's ring a bell, then show the food, and then they saw that saliva is there. So what they paired this a lot of time, they rang the bell, they showed the food, and the dog started salivating. Again they did it, they rang the bell, they showed the food, and the dog started salivating. After a lot of pairings, they only rang the bell, they did not show the food, and still the dog did salivate. This shows how pairings of things work. Now for example, how does it work in real life? So say a child is being mischievous, and the father, every time the child is mischievous, removes his belt from his pant and shows it to the child. The child is going to be very, 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 very scared. Now when he grows up, whenever he sees a similar belt, he is going to have anxiety. That is the pairing, that is a conditioning he has with the belt. Okay. Next we have little Albert and little Peter. The James Watson who had done an experiment on a child, on an infant who was 1 month old, who does not have any previous experience with a rat. So whenever the baby saw the rat, he didn't react. He used to constantly like just smile and be really normal. But what did Watson do is basically he paired the rat and the thunder sound. So whenever the rat came into the room, there was a thunder sound that was put in background, and the child started crying. Soon what they did is they removed this thunder. Okay, they removed this thunder and they said, okay, let's see how the child behaves now. So whenever now next the rat came and the thunder was not there, the child still cried. This is how you have phobias created. So this was done on little Albert, and this experiment was replicated by Mary Jones. Okay, she did it on little Peter and saw the same results, that little Peter was also not scared of the rat, but when the rat was paired with the sound of thunders, the child started crying even if there was no thunder sound, because he started associating rat with fear. This is how phobias are created according to behaviorism. Behaviorism focuses on consciousness. Everything is about conscious mind, and where we saw the previous one, psychodynamic, it's highly on unconscious mind. These are the different approaches to understand psychology, or different attempts to explain how psychology is for each one. Again going back, we saw first philosophers came in, then we saw structuralists, we saw functionalists, then we saw Gestalt, then we saw psychodynamic, and then we saw behaviorism. We'll continue this in the next part. If you like it, share, like, subscribe for more such lectures. Thank you.